courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode number 451. I am Andrew in our forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. I am joined as always by my co-host Derek. He is Deeper3 in our forum, and also on Twitter at Deeper384 and Deeper3G. Derek, good to be talking to you as always. How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. Andrew and I just got done a session on NBA 2K8 for the PlayStation 3. And Andrew made this comment during the game. It was after the first quarter. He says, "Can you put in Joakim Noah?" We were using the Bulls versus the Seattle Supersonics, and his follow-up comment was, "I effing hate Ben Wallace." So I wanted to get into that for a moment. Why do you hate Ben Wallace so much?
Well, look, I mean, he was a Piston, and I'm a Bulls fan. Piston for many years, so there's a bit of a rivalry there, obviously. But it's mostly when he became a Bull. I wasn't a big fan of him after the Malice at the Palace. I felt that he was kind of got off a bit lightly for his role in that, so he kind of became a bit of a villain. And you know how fun it is to have a villain to cheer against when it comes to your basketball fandom. And then he joined the Bulls for $15 million a year and just coasted. And look, I can't fault him for taking the money. The Pistons weren't going to give him that much money. The Bulls overpaid, get the bag and all that stuff. But he came, he wasn't a leader, he didn't try anymore. Then as soon as he left the Bulls, he started trying again. So, yeah, F. Ben Wallace.
Also, with Ben Wallace, the Bulls didn't even have great years with him.
No.
As their starting center. In fact, their best years came obviously when Derrick Rose came around, and then they ended up winning 60 games in 10-11 with, Joakim Noah at center and whatnot. And that probably felt good for you as a Bulls fan to see like Ben Wallace gone, and then all of a sudden the team rises to like these incredible levels.
Oh, it was definitely worth bottoming out in 2008 to get the top pick and Derrick Rose with the slight chance that they had to get him. And Noah, of course, emerging, because I was actually at the 2007 draft as part of the NBA Live 08 community event. They took us to that and saw Joakim Noah get picked, get drafted, and go across the stage doing the Gator Chomp clap. As he was after he shook David Stone's hand, he was walking up the stage and did the Gator Chomp. So I became a fan for him to emerge and become that all-star player and much better than Ben Wallace for the Bulls. It's just a shame that Derrick Rose went down with that injury. To put it mildly, and what could have been, Derek? What could have been?
Joakim Noah also was all effort.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it was, and
he
that's the
effort,
opposite.
yeah.
It's the exact opposite of what Ben Wallace was when he was with the Bulls. So yeah, that unbelievable hustle and everything. People don't understand. Like that's half the battle in rebounding, right? And that's why he was such a great rebounder when he was with the Bulls, is because he was just all out hustle, always boxing out, always going after the ball on every play. He was also an underrated passer.
Yes,
Noah was a good, very good passer. From out of the post, and like when they would feed him like at the top of the key and let him like make a quick play. So we're talking about your feelings about Ben Wallace, as a Bull and whatnot. It makes me think of Kid Cash's question for me. He asked me how I felt about Marcus Banks when he got drafted by the Celtics in his early years in Boston and whatnot. Kid Cash was a fan of Marcus Banks in college. I think he was a fan of him during his NBA career as well. Marcus Banks was a hell of a college player. He played 2 years at UNLV, averaged 20 points per game one season and whatnot, but he never really panned out in the NBA. He bounced around quite a bit. We needed a point guard at the time. The Celtics needed a point guard. And that year we had Mike James, Chucky Atkins, and Marcus Banks. And Marcus Banks, I think he played like 17 minutes a game, something like that. But as a fan, we never liked having him on the floor, at least in my household. And I know that sounds terrible, but he never showed the confidence in his offensive game. He never showed the confidence in his shot in general. He never really made great plays. He's very underwhelming for us in his few years with the Celtics. I think one of the problems is he was a player that had the speed of like a Nate Robinson, but he never had the confidence of a Nate Robinson, the athleticism of a Nate Robinson, or the shiftiness of a Nate Robinson. So imagine a slightly taller player than Nate Robinson, just without all of those things that made Nate Robinson great. That's how it was with Marcus Banks. To answer your question, Kid Cash, I think he was a great college player and whatnot, but we were never truly fond of Banks in Boston, at least in my household. And he was super underwhelming as a player because he wasn't a great point guard. They tried to throw him at shooting guard sometimes, but he was never confident enough in his shot or his offensive game to truly make an impact. And he never seemed to make a truly great or positive impact on the floor. I have nothing against Marcus Banks, but he was very underwhelming.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of memories of Marcus Banks like you do. I do remember creating him in roster updates and, of course, maintaining the ratings. Obviously, a player who played a lot better in college, didn't really translate to the NBA game. To that end, I think the Celtics have had a much better run with Marcus Smart than Marcus Banks.
No, and I think Marcus Smart brings a lot more to the table than Banks as a player. He's a better passer. He's a better defender. Marcus Banks was a good on-ball defender at times in the pros and whatnot, but he wasn't the all-around defender that Marcus Smart was, and he was also not as consistent as well. Marcus Banks actually was not very fun to use in video games either. You would think that because of his speed that he would be effective in past games and whatnot, but you could rarely shoot well with Marcus Banks in video games. His speed didn't really give you much. He wasn't much faster than a lot of the other guards that were in the league, and defensively he never had like a steal on him, like for a rate, like a high steal rating or anything like that, so you weren't like picking people's pockets either. I think that in 2006, the Celtics sent him away. He was traded by the Celtics with Mark Blount, Ricky Davis, Justin Reed, and a 2006 second-round draft pick, and a 2008 second-round draft pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Dwayne Jones, the Candyman, Michael Olowokandi, and Wally Szczerbiak, and a 2009 first-round draft pick. Now, bringing in Wally Szczerbiak was great because Wally Szczerbiak was like a potential 20-point scorer for us, and he spread the floor and he gave us something that we actually needed, at the time. And Kevin Garnett couldn't punch him because he was at the Celtics, and KG was still with the Wolves. I don't know if people know about that, and obviously Michael Olowokandi didn't exactly pan out as a Celtic. He was pretty much done at that point. It was actually sad. How he, came to us and performed with us when we had him. But yeah, that's how I feel about Marcus Banks, Kid Cash. No issues with him personally or anything like that. He was just very underwhelming in the NBA.
We were playing with the Bulls and Sonics, talking about players that kind of ended up a bit disappointing. I was a big fan of Ben Gordon back in the day, so it was very fun to play with him in 2K8 there in our session before we started recording. But again, there's another what if there. What if they don't let him go to the Pistons? What if he's able to be that great scorer off the bench still, or playing alongside Derrick Rose for more than a season? And Kid Cash also drew our attention to a recent incident with Ben Gordon, which we won't get into, but it's very unfortunate to hear. A few years back, he was having some issues, and there was a Players Tribune article that he wrote speaking about those issues and how he was turning things around. But that's very unfortunate. And I was a big fan of Ben Gordon back in the day, and such a dynamic scorer off the bench and later as a starter, and also fun to play with in games. He was a star for me in Live 06, my Live 06 dynasty with the Bulls. But yeah, just playing with him there in 2K8, I managed to hit a few shots with him, and I was quite pleased with myself with that.
He also helped carry us to a victory. Actually, him and one of my favorite players, Kirk Heinrich. Kirk Heinrich had a couple big steals in that fourth quarter and layups off the steals, and Ben Gordon, I think he hit a three with him, you hit a corner jumper with him, and he had a couple nice drives that I did with him and whatnot, and finishing on contact and everything. We actually ended that game on 2K8 on a 10-0 run.
Very
to
satisfying.
win it. Yeah, it was very satisfying because we were down by 4 in the fourth. I think it was like 41-37. I don't know, something like that. And we went on that huge run and then ended up winning the game. 2K8's interesting because it's really tough to go from like NBA Live 2003 or NBA Live 2004, etc., to NBA 2K8 or NBA 2K7 because you don't have that like ease of settling in. Like you don't have the right stick dribbling. You noticed it too. There's definitely like suction issues a little bit with NBA 2K8 where they put you in these animations while you're trying to dribble or while you're trying to go around your defender, and it just kind of feels like the game's controlling where your player is going and what's happening. And then you also have the issues where you'll be standing in one spot and a pass will be thrown to you and the game will make your player move like 5 or 10 feet from where he was to catch the ball, and sometimes it'll end up in a turnover or you'll end up where you don't want to be. So it's a little tougher to settle into a game like NBA 2K8 as opposed to like quickly jumping into a game of like NBA Live 2004.
I agree. I actually looked up the controls before we started playing just to get a feel for them, and see what I was dealing with before I started playing. And I was just looking up the dribbling controls, and of course there aren't really that many detailed dribbling controls in that generation of 2K. It's still that old school iso motion that I'm just not a fan of, but it still feels okay. And once you get a feel for that whole method of holding sprint and using the left stick, you start to make a few moves. But yeah, there's definitely that less pick up and play to it. Although as we went on, we did pick it up and went on that 10-0 run again, very satisfying. I also noticed in the manual they were talking about some of the improvements they made that year, and one of them was less sliding. They actually made a point of saying that in the manual, not just the previous season, but in the manual as well. And I think one of the downsides of that, obviously we don't like sliding, we've criticised it in recent games, but their method of fixing it did have players moving to those spots on passes, and yes, there's less sliding, there's more foot planting, but it also moves them out of position, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I don't know how much that has to do with sliding or just the game just being more canned in general. I just think it's harder to settle into those 2K games sometimes for the reasons that I stated. I also wanted to point out, though, how great is that crowd camera view that I chose? It's the one that I try to play on most of the time in that game because it's unique to NBA 2K8. It's the only 2K that has that camera view presented in that way. So basically, the crowd cam in 2K8, it looks like the old Sega Genesis NBA Live 96 ISO view. It doesn't rotate or anything like that. It's zoomed out, very much similar to NBA Live 96, NBA Live 95 for Sega, etc. And I thought it was great to play on that view.
As much as I enjoy broadcast cam for playing games like that, there's something very nostalgic always about playing on an isometric view in any game that allows it. And I've said it before, I'm surprised that more games don't do that because it is so nostalgic. I suppose as we're getting to the upper end of the demographic, there are fewer people who have an appreciation for that. They weren't playing the games that we were playing growing up, so they don't remember that view as fondly. But it's a fun view to play on. I think people would enjoy it. No game has really tried to do it. Live 16 kind of had a similar angle where it was kind of isometric, but it also rotated, so it wasn't quite the same as well.
It's the one they start you off in.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, NBA Live 16, they start you in that for the demo and when you first get the game, and then you have to change out of it. NBA 2, the reason why it's great on NBA 2K8 and when it was great on NBA Live 96, Live 95, and whatnot is it is fixed. You don't have to worry about the court rotating, and you have the best view of the floor. Right? Because of how zoomed out, because of the angle and it's zoomed out, you can see everything. We had no problem seeing what was going on the floor because it just showed everything. I think it's very underrated, and I think more people would use it if it was in the newer games.
But I did love the plays we were making. There was one that unfortunately didn't pan out. It was a great pass from Noah to a driving Gordon. I wasn't expecting the control to change to me. I made the pass, and you were streaking down with Gordon, and it changed the control to me, and I didn't finish because I wasn't expecting to have to hit the shoot button. But man, we made some great plays down the stretch there. Again, that 10-0 run was so satisfying because we did get behind, and you know us, we can't lose. We can't lose to the CPU, Derek.
we would have had to play again before we recorded the show.
Yeah.
No, there was a pass where actually I did a pick and roll with you. You were Ben Gordon at the top of the key, and I was Joakim Noah. And I set a pick, and I rolled off, and you hit me right in the right spot. And I did like a power dribble into a two-handed jam with Noah, and that actually had me pumped.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good play, and it's very realistic the way it looked. That game has amazing visuals. It still looks great today, like the shadows, the lighting in the arena, the way the players look, etc. Like, I think it's just a really good looking game. But you want to know why it was a little bit tough for me to get settled in on that game too, is because Nate, NBA Live 01 legend, and we had a Parsec session, and we played NBA Live 2004. And I used the Celtics, he used the Cavs, and I can't believe how much I got screwed in the first quarter. He would be the first to agree that it was crazy. I was missing open shots all over the floor. Everything was going against me, etc. So he went up like 14-2 to start this game. Quarters 2, 3, and 4 were an epic battle. I ended up losing the game by 2 because I'm not going to count that last second three he heaved up. I think it was with LeBron that went in. But he's excellent at NBA Live 2004, and that Cavs team is so tough to compete with because, as we've stated before on the show, they have 3 rim runners, 3 super athletic guys who can put the ball on the floor and throw it down, and they can also shoot in that game a lot of the time. He had a couple threes with LeBron. He can hit outside shots with Ricky Davis, but Darius Miles, Ricky Davis, and LeBron on that team are so tough to handle. They're always on the fast break. They can always jump stop into dunks. And then he had Big Z. So I couldn't get crap going in the paint with Antoine Walker, who sucked all game. Tony Battie, Vin Baker. Couldn't get anything going with any of them. But Big Z is drop stepping in there, and he's throwing it down on me on like 2 and 3 defenders and whatnot. He's hitting these little quick hooks and quick shots right at the hoop. And it's like really tough to compete with the Cavs on that game. But I thought it was a great game. I posted it to the NLSC YouTube, and him and I are going to have to connect a whole bunch more on that game because he's really fun to play against. My standout star was Paul Pierce in that game. Tony Delk hit a couple threes, but it was really Paul Pierce trying to carry me to the promised land. But go from NBA Live 2004. I'm telling our listeners this. Go from NBA Live 2004 and then jump into a game of NBA 2K8. Controls are night and day different. Pace is night and day different. And that is an interesting adjustment to try to make.
Oh, the muscle memory, trying to overcome that with the controls going back and forth like that is... You'll definitely throw a lob from half court, or I had a jump stop when I didn't mean to because I wasn't used to in 2K8 this is, used to how quickly the icon passing disappears. Other games leave it up a lot longer, or they don't switch off until you hit the button again, depending on the game. But I made a couple of mistakes like that, and you do when you're going back and forth between games. But I love getting into these older 2K games. I didn't play them as much back in the day because I was so into NBA Live, so it's been really rewarding to go back and play games. I'm glad you suggested 2K8. I've been playing a bit of 2K6 on Xbox 360 recently. Posted a couple of clips there. It may... I don't know if it's going to be my next retro kick, Derek, but I really enjoyed playing some games with the Decade All-Stars, the All-Decade teams, because Charles Barkley's in 2K6, and that makes it an oddity.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my brother and I revisited that recently, and I actually remember I posted some footage on Twitter of me playing it, and that was one of the first things we said when we went into the All-Decade teams. We're like, hey, there's Barkley, and he's got a portrait too, right?
Yeah.
It's Barkley, like in the flesh. It's unbelievable. He's in a video game. How about that?
They call him number 34. They don't actually have audio for Barkley, but they do actually have a portrait. Yeah.
Yep, they have the portrait for him. 2K6 is very interesting because it can be rough, especially if you're playing it on the higher levels, but it's definitely still a good game of basketball. And it's too bad that we can't connect on that using Parsec because if it was for Xbox One, or it could be played on Xbox One, we would be able to use it. We're using like Parsec in conjunction with the Xbox Companion app, but you can't use the Xbox Companion app with Xbox 360. So unfortunately, you and I won't be able to be playing that anytime soon. But I would have loved to jump on the sticks on that with you.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community. We have been having so much fun revisiting these old favorites and games we haven't spent as much time with. And one game that we revisited this past week over Parsec, and we've been talking about it recently because we've been playing Live 99 a lot. We were talking about revisiting 2000 as well and making some comparisons. So we connected on Parsec, Kings versus Nets, and you know, Derek, I don't know if I can separate 99 and 2000. They are both tremendous games. I don't know if I could pick a favorite.
Yeah, I hosted this session, and it worked beautifully for you as the client, and I thought we had a great game using that Kings team, and that Kings team is always fun, especially the Jason Williams Kings, right? I mean, you got Jason Williams, Peja, and in that game, Predrag Stojakovic, because they weren't calling him Peja yet in the games. Chris Webber, Vladi, like Nick Anderson, like that is just a really fun team to use. And Tony Delk's on the bench there, and you notice they kept putting him in.
Yes.
I'm a big Tony Delk guy. I like Tony Delk. I loved having him on the floor.
It's funny because the 2002 Kings we think of because they're the most successful Kings team outside of the Rochester Royals back in the 50s, obviously. But those Kings before Bibby came, when you've got Jason Williams, when you've got White Chocolate and C-Web, they are a very fun video game team.
They were more exciting to watch for me. I love Mike Bibby. I thought he was great for the Kings and maybe better, for the success of that group. But if you want to talk about pure action, you want to talk about, who's going to, how often they're going to show up on NBA Inside Stuff, how often they're going to hit the highlight reels, that's going to be with Jason Williams, right? So Chris Webber loved playing with Jason Williams, too. He talked about it. He also said that he thinks Jason Williams is probably the best ball handler he's ever seen, and I can't argue that. His ball handling was just out of this world. I love Jason Williams, big fan. Anyway, so the game was incredibly fun. Chris Webber is just an absolute beast in NBA Live 2000. He will dunk on anybody, and he will dunk on multiple defenders. It's very tough to stop him going to the hoop. So you and I both were trying to get Webber on the block or in the high post and then make moves towards the hoop just so he could get that really satisfying poster dunk. And it happened many times. I think he probably had 8 to 10 dunks in that game. But, you talk about NBA Live 99 and comparing it with Live 2000, which we talked about on the last couple episodes of the NLSC podcast. Man, from a gameplay perspective, they're just so similar. And they're both incredibly fun. The controls are basically the same for both games. I think just where NBA Live 2000 wins out is its depth.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's the legends. It's the enhanced season features. It's even a little bit better graphics. Like you had stated, they cleaned it up a little bit. Some of the cyber faces are better, but really what it comes down to it is the depth of NBA Live 2000. But you want to talk about a quick game and just having fun. Live 99 and Live 2000, they go hand in hand.
I agree. The comparison that I made talking to you afterwards in our chat, I said, for me, it's like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas in that it depends on the day. Like I may play Live 99 today and think, oh, that's the game that I prefer out of the two, slightly. And then tomorrow I'll play Live 2000 and swing back the other way because they are so similar. They're both fantastic. Live was absolutely cooking at that time, getting better in some way every single year. 2000, as you said, added that depth with franchise and legends. And I think they cleaned up a few things with gameplay as well. Obviously, the graphics are enhanced. You talk about plays that fire you up, though. What about that drop step and dunk with Webber? I love that.
Well, I made a spin move with Jason Williams and fed you on that. And it was just everything was like in sync. in exactly the way it would have happened in real life. I make the crossover and the spin move with Jason Williams. I dump it down to you, and right off the catch, you go into a power dribble drop step and throw it down two-handed. People don't get it. Like, the kids today, that stuff, when it happened in the older games was amazing. And when you can do stuff like that now in the newer games, it's still amazing, right? Like, it's amazing whether it was 22, 23 years ago or, if it happened in NBA 2K23. There was another play, which I actually shared on Twitter, where I was on in the high post with Chris Webber, and I went behind my back and then did a quick spin baseline, and I threw it down one-handed. That felt and looked absolutely amazing. I almost put that in the top 10 because I was like, man, that looks great. But there was also a point where we put Peja Stojakovic in, and immediately when we put him in, you hit a three with him. And then he hit another guarded three later in the game. And there was that differentiation aspect, which is so cool about video games. So Peja came in and kind of was a difference maker at that point. And if people remember correctly, in NBA Live 2000, Peja doesn't start. It's actually Corliss Williamson. And then Nick Anderson is that shooting guard. So we bring in Peja. He's this spark plug. He's hitting threes. Chris Webber is playing as he should be. He's throwing it down in traffic. He hit a hook shot in the post as well. Jason Williams took an ill-advised three like he would in real life, and it bricked. But overall, he's setting up his teammates, and he's getting to the hoop and hitting layups and whatnot. And it was just really fun to use that Kings team. And NBA Live 2000 did such a good job with the differentiation factor, between players, which is something that Shootout struggled with. The NBA Live 2001 legends played NBA Shootout 2004, and they were like, man, you can dunk with Mike Bibby and Bobby Jackson like they're Vince Carter, right? You can't do that in NBA Live 2000. You got to use players more to their real life strengths, and I think they did a great job with that.
I mean, we've talked about how we do see issues with animations these days if the wrong animations have been assigned, particularly to legends in modern titles. But that is something that over the years in older games, seeing that differentiation, seeing players, not just anyone who can dunk does a 360 or a 720 or 540 or something like Live 96 and 97 and that generation, which is not to dump on those games. I do love those games. But when they actually started bringing in that differentiation, that if a player dunked, they would have a suitable dunk package, an animation package for that, and having that differentiation between players, and that you could have some simple dunks for players who would just have the whole rim grazers, as they call it in 2K, was such a big step forward. And Live 2000, just great animations all around. But the other thing I love about those games, and of course I mentioned it on the podcast and in many Way Back Wednesday articles now, is the interactive almanac aspect of those titles. We're going back to games and seeing the rosters as they were at the time. Like you say, Peja before he was Peja, quite literally before they started calling him Peja in roster listings, and coming off the bench and being that reserve, that sharpshooter off the bench rather than the occasional all-star that he was as a starter a few years later. And I just loved it about old games, going back and seeing those old lineups. And we saw the same in 2K8 as well. I mean, no, I'm not a fan of Ben Wallace, but I'm still reminded of that time when we go back and play a game like that. You remember the rosters and rookie Noah and Ben Gordon on the Bulls and the backcourt of Heinrich and Gordon and Deng, of course, and Ben Wallace. But I just love that about old games, that it brings back so many memories of the real NBA as well.
Right. Mods are great, but it's also great to look at the stock rosters because it's like looking back in time. And I do love that aspect of it. I'm playing the Celtics against Nate in Live 2004, and I'm hitting threes with Walter McCarty. And I also had a really nice one-handed hammer with him on the fast break. You can see those highlights up on the NLSC YouTube. They were posted a couple days ago. But you remember guys like Eric Williams and whatnot, and how you felt about them at the time when they were playing, and it really brings you back. I also wanted to bring up something too about NBA Live 2000. I would be open to starting a season with you. And I know that we're both sim heads in this way of like stats and whatnot and stat accumulations, but I would absolutely be open to starting a season with you on NBA Live 2000 with stock rosters and doing maybe like 5 minutes a quarter. And we just play a game whenever we can and whatnot and try to go through a season. I think co-op seasons are super underrated. I've talked about it on prior shows and whatnot, and working together towards a common goal and everything. And I think that would be really fun.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we could even just do playoffs mode, recreate the 2000 playoffs, for example.
Right, exactly. We could do something like that, and maybe we could get Jason Williams Kings a ring, right? Who knows? But no, it's been really good connecting on Parsec recently. I mean, we were able to revisit NBA Live 96, NBA Live 99, NBA Live 2000, NBA 2K8. I connected with Nate on NBA Live 2004. You and I still have our NBA Jam on Fire Edition road trip. We played the All-Star game a few months back on NBA Live on NBA 2K13 using the URB and whatnot. It's just the endless possibilities. Like we'll never exhaust our options in basketball gaming and gaming together.
And how about this? Playing Jordan versus Bird PC on a floppy disk with an external floppy through DOSBox over Parsec. We have the technology.
We did it, folks. Andrew and I played the 1988 Jordan versus Bird PC version together, and I was a little disappointed. You kind of probably felt that because I still think the NES version is superior. I think the graphics overall are superior. I think the animations are superior. I think the one-on-one, when you get the hang of the shooting and whatnot, is more fun. I enjoy the three-point shootout more. I think there's more of a challenge to it and whatnot. But I'll tell you what, for a 1988 game, for the PC from a floppy disk and whatnot, that game still can be fun. And I still think the Jordan dunk animations for the slam dunk contest, the kiss the rim, the windmill, the Dr. J dunk, all of that stuff, I think they look really good for a game that came out in 1988.
Oh, for sure. And it is interesting that the NES version is better than the PC, which for that time is not actually that surprising, really. One thing I do like about the PC's graphics a little bit more, though they are lower quality, I do actually like that they have the Bulls jersey and the Celtics jersey, and they've even got MJ with his calf sleeve. That's a really nice detail. As you said, the animations are pretty cool as well. The sound effects are PC speaker, so they're nothing like the NES's sound chip. That is definitely superior, and the slightly different controls as well, but no, it's still a blast to play. I'm really glad we're able to connect on that and play a one-on-one, and then have some dunk contest practice and three-point shootout was a lot of fun to do that. And of course, I can actually copy that to the hard drive, and when we play it off the hard drive, it'll be quicker loading times. But I did want us to have that authentic floppy disk experience with the slightly longer loading times and the 1 moment please loading. That takes me back to playing games, early IBM compatible games.
It wasn't too bad. Loading times weren't too bad. They were bearable. I think that's also coming from somebody like me and you who were around for the DSL days, right?
Yes.
We were around for slow loading times and everything.
Dial-up,
I probably have a little bit of, we probably have a little bit more patience as a result. I will say that the NES music is so nostalgic for me, and they have the music playing through the events, like the different dunk contest music, the 3-point contest music, etc. And I can hear it in my head right now, and I've said this before, it makes me want to put the game on, because I have so many memories with that game. It's one of the first basketball video games that I ever played. So that's sorely missing from the floppy disk version of Jordan versus Bird. And I agree with you that I do like that they're wearing the Celtics and Bulls uniforms in that PC version. However, there's something cool about them wearing their warm-ups.
Oh, yeah.
In the NES version. The colors, just the fact that they're doing these events in their warm-ups and everything, it actually kind of makes sense. So I actually like that aspect of the NES version. But well, all in all, we had fun with it. It was nice to revisit it, and that was the first time I ever played that game. And the beauty of Parsec is I don't own it. You own it. But you were able to share that game with me, so that was kind of cool.
And of course, I did get that complete in box, so that was a great retro pickup that one, and not too expensive either. I was very pleased about that. And shout out to Mio on Twitter. She asked me, because I said, oh, it's complete in box, and it's got the manual, and it's got the disc, and it's got this and that, and the reference card, and it's got the copy protection wheel. And she says, the what? And yeah, so games back in the day, and we're talking about what we grew up with, and of course that includes dial-up internet, and or even pre-internet, of course, and floppy disks, and so on. But back in the days of floppy disks, you would have copy protection that would take the form of find a word in the manual and enter this, or you'd have a reference sheet with different copyright words that the game would randomly ask you to enter this one line, row 7, line 48 or whatever. Find the word and enter this. And the point was that you could copy the disc, but unless you copied all of those materials, then you couldn't really pirate the game. Although people found a way around it. I don't know if you've ever played Body Blows, Derek. It's a Street Fighter clone made by Team 17, who also made the Worms franchise. Kind of a Street Fighter clone for PC called Body Blows back in the day. Did you ever play that one?
Never played that, but Worms and Worms Armageddon and whatnot actually were played a lot in my house. I want to say it was the late 90s and whatnot. I'm not sure, either that or early 2000s.
So huge.
But those games are good, yeah.
So Body Blows came with a reference sheet for copyright protection, and it was yellow, so it was harder to photocopy. So they were doing things like that, or complete manuals, find the word in the manual, as I said. But the other thing they would do is these copy protection wheels. Monkey Island did it as well, the Dial-A-Pirate wheel, the original Monkey Island, where you'd have to spin the wheel and line up a certain combination as specified by the game on boot to enter whatever phrase came up when you turned all the wheels. So and they're usually themed for the games. And Jordan vs. Bird has your seat number based on row and section, etc. You spin the wheel, the 3 wheels to line it up, and then see what your seat number is and enter it. And of course, this went away when CD-ROMs came in, because originally they were harder to copy. Home optical drive writers weren't as prevalent in the mid-90s there. Of course, then they became very standard, so people could pirate games, and then they came up with other ways of protecting the games. So, yeah, it's another one of those antiquated things, Derek, that I remember from back in the day, the box full of stuff, including the copy protection materials, that a younger generation, Mio is a bit younger than us, looks at that and says, what the hell is that? But yeah, again, very nostalgic, something like that, as weird as it is.
Hey, you know what? Number one, it works. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Number two, I wish I had that for NBA 2K9 for the PC when I kept ordering copies that wasn't allowing me to install it and whatnot. I far would have preferred that old wheel tactic and whatnot in order to get NBA 2K9 for the PC to work. I also want to just let our listeners know that the biggest difference in gameplay between the NES version of Jordan vs. Bird and the PC version is that for the PC version, you just hit one button and release it to shoot. It's like any modern basketball game and whatnot. But in the NES version, you actually have to hit one button to start your shot and then hit the other button to release your shot. And you want to release the shot at the top of your form and whatnot. And I actually think that a game that's that simple, that is very limited in modes and mechanics and whatnot, I think it needs that dynamic, which is why I like the mechanic for the NES version. I think that it needs to be more skill-based, because there's really no skill involved in the PC version of shooting with Larry Bird, right? He releases it the exact same every single time, and all you do is you just push the button and release it, and he just shoots it. You just got to hope it goes in. But in the NES version, you actually have to time it, and I like that element.
There's a bit of rudimentary timing in the PC version. And what I do like is that they have their shooting forms, individual shooting forms. I think the fact that they had a couple of animations like that, they didn't just have the two of them shoot the same way. You can tell that
that's true too. You can tell there's definitely that attention to detail aspect. I see it.
Yeah, I mean, MJ and Bird are actually credited as producers on the game. They were clearly involved in the production of it, and going through the manual, reading the quotes from them, and the tips, and them talking about basketball strategy and everything. Again, that's why it's so great to have that manual. You don't actually need the manual for copy protection. It's just the wheel. But man, I'm so glad that I got the completed box for Jordan vs. Bird, because yeah, just great to just read through that manual and see how manuals used to be. And it's old paper, Derek, so it even smells like the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, just like I was impressed with some of the animations with Lakers versus Celtics in the NBA playoffs, the PC version, with Kareem's hook and whatnot, and a couple of the dunk animations. I'm the same. I'm just as impressed with some of the animations in the 1988 PC version of Jordan versus Bird. But no, it's been great. It's so cool that we can connect on a game that's that old.
And I also want to follow up on a previous eBay purchase that I made. As I said, I accidentally bought just the manual of NBA in the Zone 2000, Derek, and I now have a copy of that for PS1. That bought that, and it has arrived. And I actually got that for less. It was cheaper than the standalone manual, so that's kind of a happy ending there.
Oh, and I did see you post that, and that's awesome. I think the community is really enjoying that you're posting more content from your Twitter handle and from the NLSC's Twitter handle and whatnot. People love seeing that stuff.
It's been fun to do. I mean, obviously, do the articles, do YouTube stuff as well, but I'm trying to be a bit more active on the socials as well and share some clips as you've set a great example for me in that respect. But certainly with the collection, trying to share any new pickups, and I will take a picture of the full updated collection after I get a couple more things arriving. Still waiting for Starting 5 2005 to come from Japan. It's on the way, according to the parcel tracker. So that should be here soon. And once I've got all of that there, I will take an updated photo of. Got to pull everything out, and it's not too bad pulling it all out, Derek. It's putting it away is that's the tough part.
I love that we're inspiring each other to enhance our collections, because you saw that I picked up NBA Starting 5 2005 and you got right on it.
Yeah.
You were like, I need that game in my collection. And, I shared the footage, and that probably got you pumped up about it too and whatnot. And then you've also inspired me to go out and I need to get Jordan versus Bird, the PC version. I have to get it now, now that I played it and whatnot. And you showed me pictures of the manual and everything. So, yeah, I think I'm pretty lucky to have a friend that collects like I do and loves basketball gaming like I do as well. But how about that top 10 this week? Such a variety of games that were played that show up in the highlights. NBA 2K23, NBA 2K22, 2K17, 2K16. Then we had Live 18, Live 19, Live 2001, and Live 96. All in the same top 10, all with great highlights. I love the submissions that we're getting. I'm loving the games that you and I are connecting on and whatnot. And I love that people are still playing some of these classics.
I've said it before, I love dunks. It is, to me, the most exciting highlight in basketball, real or virtual. But man, those top two plays this week, and yes, one of them is a dunk, but it is an amazing self-alley-oop from way out. I've never seen that happen in live before. So anything that's unique really stands out. I love getting those from the community and seeing you put them in the top 10. And the full court shot by the Live King. Yeah, those are the kinds of unique highlights that, if you've got them, people, share them, because they're definitely top 10 material.
Right, and Sticky Fingers with his NBA 2K16 highlights of Mark Eaton just stuffing everything at the rim.
Yeah.
That absolutely belongs in there. And I love seeing stuff like that because, it doesn't always need to be a dunk. It can be a great defensive highlight. And Mark Eaton is arguably the greatest, is certainly single season shot blocker of all time. He holds the record by far for single season block shots with over 450 in one season. So absolutely fitting in the top 10 plays. And I had to sneak in our NBA Live 96 alley-oop into the top 10. I mean, me driving the length of the court with D Brown and then throwing it to you, who's cutting with Reggie Lewis, who skies with his head at the rim and dunks it on two Warrior defenders. That was just awesome. But yeah, thank you to the community for your top 10 submissions. The top 10 is still going strong, and it's exciting every week.
And of course, that Live 96 PC highlight came with the work in progress classic teams roster. Just throwing that together for Live 96 PC. Actually, did a bit more Live 96 PC modding last night, Derek. I finished pretty much the jersey roster, the jersey portrait roster, where all of the players are on the teams that match the jersey in their portrait, and I also put together a draft roster where everybody is on the team that drafted them, or at the very least, because 96 doesn't have a big proper free agent pool. It's just another team with 14 slots, not even the 15 slots of the time, but it's just 14. So there's a lot of players left over. They also spill into the Grizzlies and Raptors just to be their undrafted players or extra players that wouldn't fit on the team that drafted them. And it was interesting to look that up, Derek, and to move players around. And again, remember where some players were actually drafted, because you do forget. And man, there are so many players in Live 96 PC that were drafted by the Kings. Like, you can just see how many players the Kings drafted who ended up having more success elsewhere. But it's really interesting to put together. You've got a Sonics lineup that's got James Donaldson, Sean Kemp, Scottie Pippen, Nate McMillan, and Gary Payton. You've got a Warriors lineup that's got both Hardaways, Tim and Penny in there, and also Chris Mullen and Latrell Sprewell, Mitch Richmond. So there are some crazy lineups with those rosters. It's minimalist modding. I love that. And I mean, we wanted to go with a 2K game this week to play, since we have been playing a lot of live. But I'd love to connect with you on that and play with those rosters, because there are some crazy lineups there.
That Warriors roster is deadly.
Yeah.
Like, I want to put them on the floor. I think that's who I'd want to use if we were to connect and play on the same team and whatnot. And what's great about that roster that you're doing is it can be done on console as well, right? Because it's minimalist modding, really. It's you're using the game's assets.
Yeah.
And you're moving players around, right? And maybe if you wanted to, you could adjust an age here or there, adjust something on the fly.
Yeah.
But again, a jersey number. But again, that's something you can do with the in-game tools. So I really only got big into modding in like 2013. I did some modding back in the day for NBA Live 98, as I told you before. But there was a drought between, I want to say, Live 98 and Live 2000. There's a drought all the way up until 2013 where I didn't mod, like at all. So what were we doing when we were trying to get creative? We were doing what you're doing with those jersey rosters. We were getting, creative with the in-game tools, the in-game editors. We were moving players around and whatnot, creating these fantasy type scenarios with, the stock assets. And we had tons of fun and so many memories doing that. So it doesn't always need to be a big roster mod. You can do a lot with the in-game editors. And
it's fun just for your own enjoyment. I mean, I will put these out on the NLSC. They are pretty much complete. They may even be out by the time that you're listening to this. But yeah, that just my own enjoyment. They've been fun projects, and also scratching an itch, Derek, because these minimalist projects are getting me in the mood to try something a bit more in depth. So we'll see what happens there. But it's just been fun to tinker, to mess around with an old favorite. As I've said before, as much as I love going back to old games and playing them, the interactive almanac aspect of them, and just enjoying the old gameplay and so forth, retro modding is fun as well, because it brings back all the memories of messing around with the game back in the day, and again, creating a new experience for some retro gaming. Yeah, I love it.
Right. The other thing, too, is we're at the height of access and social media and sharing and whatnot. And the bonus is that now you can also look forward to us connecting and us capturing those moments. And then we can share those with the community on YouTube. And it's something that can be preserved forever. Right? Like, I uploaded recently our NBA Live 99 and NBA Live 96 sessions, those games, those highlights and whatnot. And we can have that forever. We can always look back on that. So I think it adds another aspect and another bonus to creating these rosters and whatnot, because now we can share it with the world.
And since we're always trying to share with the community the tools we use and the programs that have been so useful to us, once again, Relish Action has been fantastic. I still use Bandicam for some things, mostly screenshots these days, but also Action has been so great, getting more into that. I've actually picked up a new Elgato that has 60 frames per second, the HD60S off eBay. Unfortunately, they put the wrong cable in the box. I am sorting that out, and hopefully we'll have that sorted out by next week. But that'll be great to send you some clips that are actually in 60 frames per second, and also do some more.
Andrew was sad. I just want to point that out.
Yeah,
we were talking about it, and when he found out that they put the wrong cable in there, his demeanor from being like the happy kid on Christmas morning,
Oh yeah,
being able to test it out. Like you went from that to just being like
bombed.
you didn't get the gift that you wanted.
Yeah,
Right. Like you opened the
coal
gift
in
and
the
it's like,
stocking.
wow, this is
Absolutely.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a video game system, but it's like a package of underwear,
Yeah.
or something like that.
It's a raincoat.
Like that's, yeah, exactly. Yeah, a raincoat. No, but nobody got me a raincoat for Christmas, but I definitely got underwear.
Oh, that's that 70s show reference there. So yeah. No.
Oh, okay. I actually never watched that.
Eric got a raincoat instead of the Evel Knievel stunt cycle. Yes. So, no, that's
okay.
just,
So
that's
yeah, compare it to that, I guess. Yeah,
Very
I guess we can compare it to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love you know how I feel. Like I love my HD60, my Elgato. I've captured so much great footage using it in like 1080p, 60 FPS, and I've made so many videos with it, and it's still going strong years and years and years and years later. You ended up getting the HD60S, which is reliant on USB 3.0, and I think that's part of the problem here.
Well,
because they didn't include that cable. But I'll tell you what. Once you start capturing with the HD60S, you'll never want to share straight from the console ever again.
Yeah.
Because it's just such clean, smooth footage and really high quality. I got Nate and Roger, the Live 01 Legends, I got them the Elgato Game Capture HD, which was the original, right? And I sent that to them, and they've been capturing PS3 footage with it. They've been posting NBA 2K11 footage. I want to say I saw maybe Madden footage. They had NBA Live 10 footage that they posted from it, etc. And it just looks awesome. So I'm excited for you to get that working and be able to capture in like higher quality.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the Game Capture HD, which it's been reliable. It does the job. But yeah, it does max out at 30 frames per second. It gets 60 in, 30 out. So
what doesn't make sense though is I got them the HD. You must have even the older version, maybe the first generation. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I got them the Game Capture HD. That's what it's called. And they're capturing an unbelievably smooth 1080p at 60 FPS.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Mine is an older one that is, reliable. It does the job. The clips are there. They look okay. They can be cleaned up, obviously, if you've got the tools. But, getting it in 60 frames per second is going to be so much better. And, of course, Movavi for video production.
Yeah, how great has Movavi been? I know we've talked about it a lot, like what we use to make videos and editing tools and capture tools and whatnot. But I think it's very important to let the community know also what we recommend, because the NLSC YouTube now has so much content on it. We're uploading gameplay videos all the time and whatnot. What I recommend for an editor, Movavi Video Suite. You love it. I love it. So easy to use. Quick exports. So many stock assets. So I recommend for an editor on PC. Marillis Action for highlights and recording. I got King J Mesa on it. He absolutely loves it. He even streams with it and whatnot, and his streams are beautiful. And yeah, those two are incredibly key. And then obviously an Elgato Game Capture doesn't hurt either.
And as far as applications go, Parsec is essential as well. DOSBox for older games. And you can also install older versions of Windows on that. VMware, if you're a bit more technically savvy, you can install virtual machines on that. But there's also a lot of workarounds. We've got some of them in the download section now to run those older games. We talked about copy protection, Derek. Once they started bringing in some of the anti-optical disc copy, the CD-ROM disc protection, some of those methods have been removed in Windows 10 and even 7 and 8.1. They've been patched out. So it's vital to use those workarounds. Otherwise, it's going to try and use some copy protection that is no longer supported by Windows 10. So if you're trying to play those older games on modern operating systems, check out those resources in the forum and hit us up, because we've got some links to various guides, and we'll try to create some of our own, as we've been saying. But there are some guides out there for Live 98 through to 2001 that shout out to Matt that he put together, and for Matt's classic game fixes. That let us know. We've got some resources for you.
However, I think you're in the same boat as I am. We are going to do everything we possibly can to avoid updating to Windows 11.
Yeah.
I've heard some bad things about compatibility with Windows 11. I'm very comfortable with Windows 10 now. I have everything working on Windows 10. I'm going to avoid upgrading at all costs.
I've installed Windows 11 on a couple of customers' computers, or set it up when they bought a new one, and I'm not that impressed with it so far. And all the compatibility with older games that we've heard about, and Sticky Fingers, shout out to Sticky Fingers, has done some research into this and downgraded back to Windows 10 after finding out all these issues. So be careful about that if you're a retro gamer on PC. But speaking of our wonderful community, Derek, how about we open up the mailbag?
To the mailman. The pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk.
So, Andrew, I asked the community who their favorite cover athlete of all time was, and then the bonus question was, what was your favorite cover art of all time? So they could choose to answer one or the other. And I posted a screenshot, actually, of me holding NBA Live 96, with Shaq throwing it down, and I said, you can have Booker, I'll take Shaq.
Yes.
But I did a little research on this, and I actually have a quiz for you that goes along with the research. So the main statistical categories: points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, steals per game, blocks per game, field goal percentage, and free throw percentage. I picked the cover player that had the single season best in each one of those categories. And I'm going to name the player and the average that they had, but I want you to tell me off the top of your head what games they were the cover athlete for.
Okay.
So points per game, Michael Jordan. One season he averaged 37.1 points per game. What games was Michael Jordan the cover athlete for?
So the aforementioned Jordan versus Bird, obviously, shared with Larry Bird. He was on an insert in NBA Live 2000, just on the cover with Duncan, but down the side, Jordan is back. 2K11, 2K12, one of three. He was the special edition cover of 2K16 and also 2K23 Jordan edition. And, of course, his jersey on the special edition.
Beautiful. And Michael Jordan in the Chaos in the Windy City.
Of course, yes. Right. I mean, it's worth mentioning.
Perfect. Rebounds per game, Ben Wallace, 15.4. Your favorite player, Ben Wallace.
Of course.
What games was Ben Wallace the cover athlete on?
That would be ESPN NBA 2K5.
Absolutely. Now, I chose Ben Wallace because I don't know if we're counting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as a cover athlete, because he was kind of a shared cover athlete, but he did average 16.9 rebounds per game one season. What game was Kareem a shared cover athlete?
I'm going to say Lakers versus Celtics.
Well, yes. So that's actually a good point. So, yeah, Lakers versus Celtics. I was thinking more of a recent game, but that's a good point. Because if we want to go back, we have to go back to also Slam and Jam 96.
Yes.
With Magic Johnson, yeah.
We should have mentioned that last week for our Halloween episode, because, of course, we had the Monsters team in Slam and Jam 96 with Purple Guy, long before Five Nights at Freddy's came out. But there you go. But yes.
Yeah, exactly.
But, trivia all over the place. What's next?
So actually, and Kareem was also on the 2K22 Legends Edition.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, that was the other one. Assists per game, Magic Johnson averaged 13.1. And what covers did Magic Johnson grace?
Well, of course, there's Slam and Jam with Kareem, I imagine. There's, if not Lakers versus Celtics, he was 2K12, one of three. And there's a game that it has two different titles, but the one that I know it by is Magic Johnson's Fast Break.
Bingo. Yep, exactly. Steals per game. Michael Jordan, again, we don't have to do this one, but 3.2 steals per game. Blocks per game. Let's see if you can get this right away. Hakeem Olajuwon, 4.6.
Ooh.
I'll give you a hint. I posted my collection of this recently.
That would be NBA Shootout 98, also known as Total NBA 98 in Australia.
You're good. Yep, exactly. He's going in for that huge one-handed dunk.
Yeah.
On NBA Shootout 98's cover. Field goal percentage, Shaq. If we want to count this, he was 66.7% in 37 games for the Celtics at the end of his career. But he's still the top spot with 60.9% with the Suns in 75 games. So what covers did Shaq grace?
Well, of course, there's the classic Shaq Fu, if we're going to mention Chaos in the Windy City. We don't need to mention Shaq Fu. So there's NBA Live 96, the PC and PS1 version. There's NBA Inside... Is it NBA Inside Drive 2004? I'm trying to remember which one is it. Inside Drive 2004, because I know that T-Mac was on the other Shootout 2004, wasn't it? Was that T-Mac?
Yeah. No, you got it right. Shaq's on NBA Inside Drive 2004 cover with the Lakers uniform. He's holding the ball.
That's right.
With one hand on his side. Yeah.
And NBA 2K18 Legend Edition.
Yeah. So he was. Yeah. So NBA Live 96, NBA 2K6, NBA 2K7.
Of course, 2K6 and 2K7. Yes. How could I forget?
Yeah. Remember, he was back to back. It was really
That's
weird.
right. Yeah. Interesting trivia about the 2004 season games. Most of the players, I think T-Mac was on Shootout, Shaq was on Inside Drive, and Vince Carter was 2004. They all moved on before or during the 2005 season, so they were all gone the next year from their teams.
That's some interesting trivia, actually. Free throw percentage: Larry Bird 93%. So what covers did Larry Bird grace?
So that would be Jordan versus Bird, obviously. One of the cover athletes of 2K12. And I'll say that he was part of the Lakers versus Celtics.
Also Dr. J versus Bird.
Of course, Dr. J versus Bird, yes. The original, yeah.
So yeah, that's that. Also, just if we wanted to count this, on the cover of NBA All-Star Challenge, Hakeem Olajuwon is on that. So if you want to go back to Hakeem, he's on the furthest to the left of the box and whatnot. So yeah, he was a cover athlete back then.
Might be the only.
He's also sneaky in NBA Live 95, Andrew. He's sneaky.
That's
NBA
the thing,
Live
yeah.
90. Ori is the cover athlete, technically, if you wanted to call it that.
Starks and Ori,
visible.
Yeah.
Right. But if you actually look underneath Ori, who's like looking, he's like starting to box out and whatnot, Hakeem's there.
And of course, the cover of NBA Fast Break 98 has Jordan's arm in it, and sort of part of his body.
Yep. So technically, unless you want to count Adam Keefe as more of a cover athlete for NBA Fast Break 98, because
why wouldn't I? But
right.
So no, thank you. That was some awesome trivia. I love that, and diving into like those kinds of details about basketball games, all part of the nostalgia, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And it is funny, that Shaq thing, that I think a lot of people forget, that he was a 2-time cover athlete for NBA 2K back to back. Like, what a strange thing that was, because there were so many players in the league that could have like graced the cover that hadn't like been on the cover before, like Vince Carter, right? Like, why not grab Vince Carter for 2K6 or 2K7? Why have Shaq for both of those games?
Yeah, because of course Live 06 had Dwayne Wade on the cover, which meant that the 06 and 2K6 were the first year that both Live and 2K had a champion on their cover in the same year.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense too. And I believe we talked about that at the time. When they were new, we were like, this is cool because, they were both champions and whatnot, but I don't know why they did that for 2K7.
So before we get to the community's answers, I'll just throw out there and say that Michael Jordan is my favorite cover player. Probably no surprise there. And I do really like the 2K23 cover art, but I think I will have to go with 2K12. I really like that design.
I couldn't make a decision. I know that sounds crazy, but because I asked the question, but I couldn't really make a decision on my favorite cover athlete or my favorite cover art, because I like so many, right? Like, even going back to that NBA Inside Drive 2004 cover art with Shaq in a Lakers uniform holding the ball, by his side and whatnot, like he's palming the ball. Like, that's so cool. Like, I love the look of that. I also love the look of, the Jordan versus Bird cover.
Of course.
Cover art and whatnot. So, like, it's hard for me to choose a favorite. And then as far as, like, a favorite cover player, I mean, Clyde Drexler was on the cover of NBA All-Star Challenge. I mean, technically he's a cover player. I could choose Clyde Drexler. I'm a huge Julius Erving guy. You've probably noticed that with me and my brother in the top 10 plays of the week. Irving gets in there a lot. We love Julius. He's been on the cover before. I mean, I love Vince Carter. He's been a cover athlete before for NBA Live, obviously. T-Mac's been on the cover of many different titles. I can't choose, I guess, a favorite cover player. Sean Kemp was on the cover of NBA Showdown, if you remember correctly.
NBA
he was
Extreme,
also on NBA Jam Extreme, with one of the most famous covers. And actually, Hakeem Olajuwon could technically be called a cover athlete there too, right? Because he's in the picture.
Yeah.
I don't know. With the Houston Rockets pajama uniforms. So, yeah, I don't know. Love Hakeem, love Drexler, love Irving. Too tough for me to choose.
Would you say you have a preference as far as the style of cover, like a straight-up cutout of the photo of the player, or maybe something a bit more stylized, like a 2K23, like a 2K12, or the Dwight Howard cover of NBA Live 10 is a little bit more stylized, as opposed to just being the straight-up picture of the player cut out on the cover?
I'm flexible. So we come from a time when there wasn't even a cover athlete for a lot of the games. It was just an action shot.
Of course.
Like we talked about, like NBA Live 95, it's Robert Horry going up at the rim. But it's not like Robert Horry's the cover player. It's just like an in-game action shot that they chose. Same with NBA Fast Break 98 and whatnot, Bulls versus Blazers, games like that. So I can take that. I can also take like the NBA Live 2004 approach, where it's just a player, simple yet effective. Jason Kidd, Vince Carter examples and whatnot. And then I can also go the route of NBA 2K12. It was, either all three of them, Bird, Magic, and Jordan on the cover together, or we had talked about on previous episodes, or like them solo on the cover. And it's this really cool art style behind them. I think those are really cool covers. So I don't really have a preference. I think that as long as it's well done, it's well done.
I've come around to that way of thinking. I'll admit to being a bit of a snob back in the day and preferring either the action shot or that more traditional cutout of the player on the cover, and looking at some of those more artistic designs and feeling a bit iffy about them back in the day. But now I've come around to really appreciate them and to actually have that more experimentation and artistic flair to them. No, I think there's been tremendous covers of both styles, so I agree.
I think that we're very fortunate to have companies that back in the day really experimented, right? And they tried new things and whatnot, because that we're old enough, you and I, to kind of see not the progress, but all of these companies trying these new things and doing different things with the covers. Because like I stated, it started one way where it was mostly just that screen from a game and just all the players on the court. Then it went to like targeting the stars, right? Like a guy that, they think would help sell their game, even like Steve Smith for Fox Sports Basketball 2000. He was targeted because they thought, hey, you know what? He's available and he can possibly help us sell our game. And then later on, they ended up coming out with like Legends editions, right?
Of course.
That was a newer thing. So they started coming out with, the regular current player and then Legends edition, whether it be Dirk and Kareem or Kobe. Kobe was for 2K17. Etc. Then like the special edition with Jordan and 2K16
regional covers.
So
yeah,
regional covers. So we got to see like how that changed up over the years, and I have like an appreciation of all of it, to be honest.
And it has become a big deal. I mean, back in the day it was just the cover player, but now it became something that people really focused on, the reveal of the cover and whether it was a good choice or not, and ultimately it's what's inside the box, right, or the digital download, as the case may be. That matters, but there's something about having a cool cover and a player that you like on the cover of a game that again, it's just that added part of nostalgia and appreciation for the game.
And speaking of 2K16, and then we can get to people's responses, I did connect briefly with Sticky Fingers because he's been really into that game lately. You've been seeing him post a lot of stuff on Twitter, and I was the guest, and we were just playing. I don't know the stock rosters. It was Warriors versus 76ers, and I was the Warriors, he was the 76ers, and man, that game is still fun, and it's really fun to get on the sticks with somebody else and whatnot. So shout out to Sticky Fingers for spending some time modding NBA 2K16, because it is one of the best games in the franchise's history as far as being well received.
So getting to the answers now, first up we have Steve, the Live King, at Steve from the Dot, answers with a GIF, which is Vince Carter's incredible reverse dunk against the Indiana Pacers, which of course represents, if nothing else, NBA Live 2004. So yeah, no, I agree, that was a very memorable cover.
Yeah, I'd like to connect with him on that game. We did connect on NBA Live 18. I want to say we also connected on NBA Live 15 at one point. But I'd like to connect with him on one of the older live games, because he definitely has an appreciation for that era, that great era of NBA Live games, and I bet he's great at the games.
Next up we have Chuck, at ChuckLA92, has Kobe Bryant in NBA 2K10 holding out the jersey, the famous pose that he would do the celebration. and certainly a memorable cover. And do you remember the Spike Lee Kobe Knicks cover with him wearing number 17? Linsanity, before Linsanity.
Yeah, do you remember the Kobe Bryant NBA 2K10 commercial where he's sitting down on a couch with Derrick Rose?
Yes.
And they're playing NBA 2K10 and they're like kind of trash talking back and forth and whatnot. What a great commercial, right? They definitely helped sell that game, and they don't make commercials like that anymore. But when I think of NBA 2K10 and I think of Kobe, that sticks out, that commercial. The game has a great soundtrack, has great gameplay, and that's one of those covers that have a little bit of an artistic twist to it around Kobe, and I think it's really good.
It's also a winning a poll winner to have that design, because there were 4 different covers, including I think there were 3 Lakers covers and then the joke Knicks cover, which was never going to be a thing. They were never going to do that, but there was an option that was going to be struck from the poll when they were tabulating the results. But there were actually a couple of other designs. Go back and see them. I think I posted them in my when I look back at that Knicks cover for way back Wednesday, the alternate covers that they could have had for 2K10. I think that they went with the best possible pose for that one, and like you say, that artistic flair on the cover just makes it stand out.
Yeah, and I mean, Kobe was winning a lot at that time, right? They had won the 08-09 season NBA championship, so the 2009 title, and then of course they won again in 2010. So some great rosters to use in those games as well.
Next up, we have AP_problem on Twitter. Favorite cover athlete of all time? That's tough. Almost a tie between MJ and AI. I'm going with the man who made Jordan reevaluate his ankles, AI on NBA 2K Sega Dreamcast 1999. Favorite cover of all time? Yuta Tabuse on Live 06 Japanese release. The most exotic cover ever. Yeah, now that is a very rare collectible. Every so often I have a look for it on eBay. I've never seen that one show up, and I imagine it would be very expensive. But that is definitely an obscure cover, and kind of cool that he was, I think, the only free agent to appear on a cover, albeit wearing the Japanese team jersey. But yeah, that's obscure.
Yeah, he spent a little bit of time with the Suns.
4 games, yeah.
But I don't think, it was like 4 games, yeah. No, that is interesting. I love the loyalty that 2K, paid to Allen Iverson in the early stages of 2K's come up, right? He was the original cover athlete. He was the face of the game, and then they stuck with him for 2K1, 2K2, 2K3, and ESPN NBA basketball. So he was the cover athlete for all of those games. It's unfortunate what happened with Allen Iverson, though, with like 2K16 and 2K15, because his cyberface is absolutely terrible in the 2K games. They really butchered it. It looks absolutely nothing like him in those games. And I always thought that was kind of disrespectful for somebody that meant so much to the series. But yeah, those Allen Iverson covers, I've shown my collection before. I have all of the Dreamcast 2Ks and whatnot, and those are special.
Also follows up by saying most 2K covers by an athlete, first 5 editions of 2K, as you said, Allen Iverson, cover athlete was AI, and MJ 2K11, 2K12, 2K16, and 2K23 editions leading the way with 5 different covers. Yeah, definitely been some repeat cover plays in 2K. Live hasn't done that, although they were set to do that with Live 13, with Dwayne Wade, who was on the cover of Live 06, but of course Live 13 went down in flames.
Right. I really wish Live 2013 had come out, because it had to have been better than Live 14.
Chuck also mentions 2K10 Kobe, 2K11 MJ, and 2K23 MJ. Very popular choices there. Next up we have Little Rascal Mike at MC_386. I'm biased because of being a Magic fan, but NBA Live 10. And yes, that was that stylized cover with Dwight Howard that I mentioned before. And that's really grown on me. Live 10 in general has really grown on me. It was my big retro kick last year, as you recall. But yeah, that cover's pretty cool as well.
Dwight Howard was huge back then, right?
Oh yeah,
I mean, that was
people forget.
Dwight Howard. That was Superman Dwight Howard. That was dominant post dunker Dwight Howard. That was unstoppable rim protector Dwight Howard. Like, people forget, because there's been a lot of jokes made about him over the last few years, but people forget how absolutely great and dominant Dwight Howard was in the late 2000s and even super early 2010s. He was a fitting cover athlete for NBA Live 10, and I don't remember anybody balking at that at the time.
Next up we have Trav at MidwestKing_100. 2K23 Jordan Edition is my favorite cover art. Shaq on Live 96 is my favorite athlete. So yeah, I did really love what they did with 2K23. And yeah, it's funny because not Live 96, as we mentioned during the trivia, he's on the PC and PS1 cover, but the other 16-bit versions have the traditional shot of the NBA Finals, similar to Live 95, the Magic versus Rockets.
Yeah, I do like the differentiation there. And of course, in the picture that I posted, I'm holding up the long box PlayStation version, which is Orlando Shaq cramming it in with one hand and whatnot. So yeah, no, I think those are good choices. I think I like that he mixed it up, from his favorite athlete and then the favorite art. And I do like the Michael Jordan edition NBA 2K23 cover. I said it on a prior episode. I thought they did a really good job with that. I far prefer it over the Devin Booker one.
Next up, we have D Zulu at Debo Khan on Twitter. KG is my all-time everything NBA-wise, and Kid is my NBA and college point guard, and shares the covers of NBA Live 2001 and NBA Live 2003. Yeah, that 2001 cover is classic, KG going up for the dunk, of course. And I remember the Live 2003 cover, Derek, there being a tease for that back in the day, that they put out the shadow of the cover and people were trying to guess who it was based on the shadow of the armband, the outline of the armband, and the way he was dribbling the ball. And quite a few people did pick Jason Kidd in the original Black and Blue NLSC forum. But I remember that as one of the first big teasers in the previous season for us.
Yeah, Jason Kidd, not one of my favorite cover athletes of all time. I was actually never really that big of a fan of him as a player. But, the Nets around that time did make 2 finals in a row, and they were the best team in the Eastern Conference. So, I mean, it was a fitting choice to have Kidd be the cover athlete of NBA Live 2003. And, NBA Live 2001, obviously, Nate Stasio and Roger Ward, the Live 2001 legends, love that choice of, KG. And I believe Nate also responded to this saying that, obviously, NBA Live 2001.
He did. There was no surprise there. But again, I love how they fly the flag for 2001.
Oh, my God, yeah. I think it was Roger that said that if he had $20, he would buy 10 copies of NBA Live 2001. Yeah. So, I mean, they're definitely committed, and they love it.
Next up, we have Tony Styles Jr. at Tony Styles 24. Some of my favorites are AI on NBA 2K2, Dwayne Wade NBA Live 06, LeBron on NBA 2K14, but my favorite is Kobe NBA 2K10. 2K14, as you know, another favorite of mine as of the last year or so. And look, LeBron is not one of my favorite players, but that is a pretty cool cover.
So yeah, NBA Live 06, Dwayne Wade, he's chosen for the cover athlete, and then he goes on to win the NBA championship.
Good pick.
How about that? Yeah, I mean, it's a great pick. That was, and then he ended up being the talk of everybody's household at that point. That and the fact that the Dallas Mavericks choked that series away. And there were a lot of questionable calls that favored the Heat, but we're not going to get into that on this episode of the NLSC podcast. I have feelings about that series and comments Tim Donaghy has made around made about it and etc. But anyway, yeah, great. I thought the Live 06 cover was great. Unfortunately, the game was a little bit underwhelming for a lot of people. Not the PS2 version or the PC version, but the next gen version at the time,
360,
360 version, and that part was unfortunate.
And that had a different cover, because usually when they have multi-platform, it's they quite often have the same cover across all platforms except for the strip that says PS2, PS3, whatever. But they've had the same cover art. But yeah, they went with a different shot of Wade for the next gen version, which was interesting. And again, I guess kind of underscored the idea that it was a brand new game.
Yeah, Wade was one of my brother Nick loved Dwayne Wade, so we were talking about him really early on, even when he first came into the NBA. My brother was super excited that they ended up winning the title in 2006, and the funny part is that my brother Mark was a gigantic Dirk Nowitzki fan. Always loved Dirk, so he wasn't as happy as Nick. So that was a thing where they just couldn't agree on that. But my brother Mark, whenever we do fantasy drafts, still drafts Dirk Nowitzki when he's available, like in every video game, every time. So he loves Dirk.
And finally, we have from the NLSC Discord, Juicy Shackmeat, and of course in the forum as well, mod in our community, lots of great 2K11 mods, as we've said before. Says for the favorite cover athlete of all time, choose Brandon Roy from NBA 10 The Inside. All-time favorite cover athlete, around 2008 to 2011. My favorite team, the Pistons, wasn't very good, so my attention went to the Trailblazers after I once saw they sent 6 players on the floor against the Celtics. I remember that too. Turned out to be a blessing in disguise as I learned more about their star player, Brandon Roy, who was very fundamentally sound as a scorer and earned Kobe Bryant's respect. He was considered the toughest player to guard by the Mamba. Pained me emotionally to witness his quick decline due to his leg condition. His comeback with the Wolves gave me a glimpse of hope that he may overcome his injuries after all, but to no avail. After his playing career, he became a very successful high school coach. He made the news again in 2017 when he shielded children from gunfire and got hit in his leg. Thankfully, he's recovered since. Learning that, I'm so glad I had a favourite player who was not only an outstanding player and coach, but also an outstanding human being. And thank you for the detailed response, Juicy Shackmeat. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an obscure choice as well. NBA 10 The Inside, PSP exclusive, I believe. Certainly not as prominent as some of the other games we've been talking about. But yeah, that's a game that I know that you own and you've played, so you can talk a bit more about it than I can. But yeah, a pretty cool choice at the time, and yeah, Brandon Roy, such a great character.
Never heard a bad word about Brandon Roy from players, coaches. After he retired, his exploits after, when he went out and, when he was out of the NBA and whatnot. I think that's a fitting choice, and a lot of people, can look up to him as kind of a role model and whatnot. So yeah, I absolutely no issues with that choice. I also want to point out two things. One, for a guy who has a handle, Juicy Shackmeat, which is incredibly weird. Juicy Shackmeat, I've connected with him before and I've talked to him a lot on Discord and whatnot. He is the opposite of weird. He just seems like a really cool dude. So wanted to let you know, thanks for listening to the show and participating in the conversation and everything, but that is a very weird name that you have for
hey, stands out.
Yeah, it does stand out. People have commented on it already. Juicy Shackmeat. Otherwise, I also want to say about NBA 10 The Inside, it is a fun game. I did play it and I posted some footage on it. It has the skills challenge in that game and it's very well executed. The gameplay is really loose and fun. It is too bad that they didn't bring it to PS3.
And Juicy also says, for my favourite cover art and style, it's a tie for me between NBA 2K10, so another vote for that one, the anniversary cover, 10th anniversary cover, and NBA Street Volume 2. I'll never forget how awed I was seeing it for the first time in my hometown during my freshman year semester break. The way the gold colours pop out, and seeing a semi-blurred, hyped-up Kobe couldn't make me resist looking at it. The cover athlete choice was also fitting after the Lakers just won the finals that year, just like Garnett in 2K9. However, after reading how the NLSC community looks fondly on NBA Street Volume 2, seeing the cover art repeatedly made me fall in love with the exaggerated player illustrations and half-retro, half-gangster title font. It truly captured that early 2000s urban flair that I still get nostalgic for from time to time. Yeah, NBA Street Volume 2. I'm surprised we didn't get a few more comments on that. That is definitely a great cover as far as that stylized approach. And yeah, as he says, very popular around the early to mid-2000s, that style, and just perfect for NBA Street Volume 2.
I also want to point out when we were going over cover at like Michael Jordan on covers, he was actually on the Street Volume 2 cover.
Of course.
He's behind Irving, actually, to the left of him. Or like when you're viewing it to your left and whatnot. And I believe he's doing like a one-hand dunk animation.
He is, yes. Also, a render of on the Japanese cover of the original NBA Street is a in-game render of MJ.
Right, and don't you have like I think it's NBA Live 2002 MJ Wizards cover?
Yep, NBA Live 2002.
Well?
Yep, Japanese NBA Live 2002 and Japanese NBA Street, both with MJ on the cover. Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, those covers, in my opinion, do count. So
there you go.
We mentioned Utah Taboose and whatnot too. So yeah, obviously Jordan spent a little bit more time in the NBA and had more success than Utah Taboose, but we don't need to go into that.
Slightly, a little bit more.
A little bit.
So thank you to everybody who responded to the question. Some great covers there, and Derek, although it is ultimately immaterial, the game inside is what matters, and some people say, oh, it's just the cover and whatnot. It's still an interesting talking point. There's some interesting trivia around covers, like the Japanese covers of NBA Street or NBA Live 2002, like the players moving on, or the 2004 cover athletes moving on, either in the off-season or during the season, in the case of Vince Carter the following year. Just looking at those covers also brings back memory of the games and playing them. So, no, it's always a fun, nostalgic topic to talk about video game covers.
Yeah, it's a fun part of collecting. It's, just like getting the manual, right? It's all part of the experience, right? The nostalgic experience. It's the manual, the cover, the disc art, the back of the box, all of that stuff. It's all awesome.
And for people who didn't necessarily follow the preview season very closely, and when they were first getting into basketball gaming and basketball, you just see that cover player. You go to the video game store and you see the all the sports games, you see the basketball games lined up there, and you remember seeing, oh, what's this game? NBA Live 2003, Jason Kidd on the cover. You know, you were drawn to things like that. So it's easy for us to sometimes, with us being such hoop heads and virtual hoop heads that really followed all the previous seasons in depth. I think we can lose sight of how it appeals to the more casual gamer as well, and that's what they remember.
It also speaks to a time, right? So, like, when you see Vince Carter on the cover of NBA Live 2004, you see him in a Raptors jersey.
Of
right?
course,
He's
yeah.
not with the Nets. He's
Ben
not
Wallace,
with Dallas. He's not with Phoenix. Right. Yeah, you see Tracy McGrady in Orlando Magic jersey. It brings you back to those teams and rosters and whatnot, and that amazing version of T-Mac, you know, that averaged 30 and whatnot. You know, you're not thinking about, you know, later in the 2000s when he ended up with like Houston
and everybody
and whatnot. Yeah, right. Exactly. The Spurs later on in the 2010s for a short stint, or like the Knicks or the Hawks. What a weird thing for T-Mac to play with the Knicks and the Hawks and those, and the Pistons and those short stints. It just never looked right.
There's actually an Instagram account that I follow, the Classic Hoops, I believe it is, and they're doing In Case You Forgot series at the moment. And players in kind of familiar faces in strange places, kind of like my articles. And T-Mac shows up in a lot of them. It's become a bit of a running gag in the comments that pretty much every In Case You Forgot is it features T-Mac at this point.
Can't wait for those Michael Olowokandi with the Celtics highlights and those Darko Milicic preseason Celtics highlights. Can't wait to see those on that channel. Too bad Darko didn't stick around. I was actually hoping to see him play a full season in the Celtics uniform.
Yeah, it's all part of that interactive almanac aspect, and that year that Ben Wallace was a star, as he was after the Pistons won. So it really is a time capsule. The rosters in the game, everything, and the gameplay really captures the spirit and of the time and the NBA as it was. But yeah, the cover players, you know who was hot at the time, who was a star. But thank you again for the answers, and stay tuned for more mailbag questions moving forward.
Absolutely. Keep interacting with us, answering the mailbag. Come up with topics you'd like us to discuss on the show. Kid Cash has done a really good job with that. Keep submitting highlights to the top 10 for the top 10 plays of the week and whatnot. We love to hear from you, and you guys are a big part of this.
With that being said, that has brought us to the end of the show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us and, of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So, Derek, go ahead and plug those handles.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, where I'm the most active, at D4Free84 and at D4Free-G. I'm on the NLSC, D4Free, and YouTube, D4Free.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. Our Instagram is NLSC Basketball. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.